Hempel, CollegeHumor, Vimeo, and TeePublic, Josh Abramson, and the founder of Asana, Justin Rosenstein.
Hello and good afternoon. I'm the Jessi of Josh, Justin, and Jessi, in case you were not clear on that one. And I'm joined here by two founders and tech purveyors, and we're going to talk about the philosophy of business and their personal philosophies of business and how they were developed. And that is going to be an interesting conversation because when I asked Justin about this earlier, he told me, well, you know, I was thinking about my philosophy for business before I was thinking about learning to code. And when Josh and I talked about it earlier, he talked about actually starting his business and developing the philosophy through developing the business. So it's two very different approaches. But let's start with, and Josh, I'll start with you. Tell me about how you found your way into becoming an entrepreneur.
Sure. So I started my first company, CollegeHumor.com. It was 1999, and I was 18. I didn't really have any job opportunities, so it was really a means to which to earn money to buy beer and that sort of thing. So being in college and sort of not really having any responsibilities made it easy to work on that, and sort of led me to starting other businesses as that became more successful, and sort of had ambitions outside of just having a comedy website.
When did it go from being your side hustle to becoming your main hustle?
About the time when I graduated, I always thought that College Humor would just be like a thing I did in college. I remember thinking someone suggested that I do it after college. I was like, why would I run a college humor website when I'm in my 20s or 30s? Right. But at the point of when I graduated, it was making enough money, so it was more lucrative than any job I would have gotten at the time. So it was an easy decision. It wasn't actually a particularly risky decision. I'd like to joke that I'm probably the most risk-averse entrepreneur that you'll meet, and I've never really had to take any risk because, again, when you start something in college, you don't have, there's not really that much that you have to do for it to be successful, versus leaving a high-paying job.
And the other piece of that was that you weren't raising money to fund it. You simply created a thing that made money, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I've never raised money for any of my businesses, actually. So they've always started very small and then sort of grown organically, which is a bit. It's a slower approach, but it's also when you don't take money, you don't need to sort of have as large ambitions or have as big of an exit for it to be meaningful.
And we're going to talk about that idea of ambition in a second, but Justin, I want to go to you. Tell us how you found your way to entrepreneurship. It was a beat later than that, really.
Yeah, I got my career started at Google and at Facebook, where I helped invent things like Google Drive, Gmail Chat, Facebook Pages, Facebook Like button. So was managing to get some things done, but my subjective experience pretty much the whole time was a lot of frustration about that it just felt like we were spending so much time on just coordinating with each other, on just making sure the left hand knew what the right hand was doing. And at first I thought...
And Justin, tell us specifically during that period, your background was coding, right? I mean, you came in as an engineer.
Well, yeah, when I started programming when I was 10, and at the time would just sit in my room alone, nerd that I was, and make little pieces of software. And when I got to Google, I was excited by the prospect of, oh, I'm going to be working with all these other people. Now it should go much faster, and we should be, if there's 10 people on a team, you go 10x as fast as I could go. But instead, it felt like everything was just such a slog because of the email and the meetings and the coordinating and the status updates and all of this stuff to keep everyone on the same page. And eventually found out that that was actually the norm. There's this study from McKinsey that over 60% of the average knowledge worker's time is not spent on work, not on their actual job, but on the work about work, on all of that coordinating and overhead. And so developed an internal solution, first at Google, and then developed an internal system at Facebook that really just took off within Facebook, and I think has been a big source of how that company is able to get so much done. And so as we looked at that, at first it was tempting to say, well, let's just keep this as a secret sauce for us. We'll just make Facebook the most effective company in the world. But the more we thought about it, kind of from a philosophical lens, the more we realized that this problem of teamwork is so universal, and the solution we felt like we had come up with was universal. And so all the things that we care about, which wasn't just Facebook, but it includes improving education, or improving healthcare, or improving democracy, or enabling clean, sustainable energy. Basically, everything that matters in human progress requires teams of people to work together. And if all those individual teams are spending the majority of their time on this work about work, if we could create this single horizontal solution that could benefit all those people simultaneously to move faster, that just felt like such a hugely leveraged opportunity to benefit the world. And so we left Facebook to start Asana to do that.
And that was 6 years ago, 9 years ago that you left Facebook, and 6 years ago that you started Asana. And so now I want to talk about this idea, this nebulous idea of a philosophy. So Josh, if I were to ask you in a couple of sentences to describe your business philosophy, how would you answer that question?
I think, I think the first thing that's important for any entrepreneur is to sort of, be clear on what their ambition level is. And if you're trying to build a multi-billion-dollar business, you need to approach things a certain way. You probably need to raise money. You need to build out a team. You just need to be very thoughtful from the beginning, to sort of achieve that. If you're trying to build something that, earns you beer money in college, you can sort of approach it in a very different way. So I think as I've grown up and as I've, started multiple businesses, and as I think about each one in terms of, how big do I want it to be, or what's the range of sort of potential outcomes, and I like to think of ways to allow for the largest number of potential positive outcomes. So whether it's a cash flow generating business that, I enjoy working on and, can support my lifestyle, that's a positive, sort of outcome, or it could be acquired for, a large amount of money and, turns into something much larger. There's a wide spectrum that could exist, and I think, I like to approach things, more from that attitude. Personally, I'm not trying to build a billion-dollar business, and as a result, I think it's a lower risk, lower reward potential, or at least a lower chance of having the huge outcome when you sort of approach it that way. But there's also a much lower chance of, spending 6 years, working on something that, you end with it being worth zero. So,
you say you're not trying to build that size business. What are you trying to do?
I think about, it's a good question. I mean, sort of, what is it?
This is going to be a two-part therapy session. So for
Sure. So I think, initially my goals with starting businesses was to make a certain amount of money, to have a certain type of lifestyle. And I think, after selling one company, I was able to sort of take a step back from that and think more about, what do I enjoy working on every day? And obviously, I think, if you're not raising capital, your business needs to be profitable in order for you to continue doing it every day. So. I enjoy the people that I work with. I enjoy, having a team of people that are sort of focused on a specific goal. And in our case, we have a business that enables designers to, essentially make a living on their own using our platform. So I take a lot of pride in that, and, seeing people in, other countries who are making, many times their average, the average salary for their country, for example, just by selling T-shirts on the internet. Like, I think I get a kick out of that. So I enjoy sort of, that process. And I enjoy, again, sort of running businesses that are profitable. I know that sort of sounds silly to certain people, but I think, frequently you'll have meetings with people who are entrepreneurs that are they're just not really even thinking about, how to make money. And, it works if you're Mark Zuckerberg, or, you sort of figure it out eventually. But I think, a lot of people aren't really, cognizant of that in the beginning. So that's something that I've always been very focused on.
That makes a lot of sense. Justin, I want to put the question to you. How would you describe your philosophy for doing business?
Well, I'll step back to just my philosophy that motivates me in general, because I think business is a strategy toward achieving that. I think most people have become accustomed to this, but I just pretty much every day walk around entirely shocked that we're alive. I think the fact that there is a universe at all, the fact that there is consciousness and sentience, and that we are these weird little three-dimensional creatures tooling around in the universe is just bizarre. Just bizarre. And so that, combined with death, always makes me think, okay, I have a very precious little beautiful time in which to do some things, and how do I want to spend that time on Earth? And some of that's in the form of personal joy and fulfillment. But I've, over the years, come more and more back to this idea of that love and service and trying to make the world as joyful as possible, as beautiful as possible, equitable for all beings, create a world that works for everyone. is a highest calling and something that I really think everyone can participate in. Now, there's a vast number of ways to do that, and building enterprise software is not the one that normally people think of as a way to even take a step in that direction. But I'm just always thinking of, okay, what can I do with my particular skill sets? What can each of us do with our particular skills and passions and interests that can be most in service of the world? And I particularly feel privileged. I mean, 70% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. So for those of us who have choices about what we get to work on, the opportunity, and especially in the technology industry, that there are so many opportunities that are simultaneously lucrative and have the ability to have positive impact on the world is really exciting.
Where does profit fit into that mix?
So I think of profit as the rocket fuel that you need. So just in the way that when you're building rocket ships, the point is not to accumulate as much rocket fuel as possible, but you still need rocket fuel in order to get to the moon. Here, profit is a means toward an end of accomplishing some social goal. And that's a very different mindset than the way that we normally think about capitalism. I think even technically, C corporations are legally required to do what's in their shareholder interests. We think of companies as these profit-maximizing engines. They're just trying to increase shareholder value at all costs. But I think if we continue in a worldview where that's how we define the goal of business, we're going to lead to very bad consequences, the kind of bad consequences that we see where those businesses will just consume all resources. If we instead redefine our understanding of business as a vehicle for accomplishing some social good in the world and profit as a means toward that end, the rocket fuel to get there, I think we can create a world that works better for everyone.
To what degree do both of you find social good to be some aim of your approach to business? I'll start with you, Justin, because I keep putting you on the spot to go first, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, so our theory of change, the entire reason we do it is for social good. And certainly, Asana is getting used by all sorts of corporations that are not doing social good in the world, that are just doing some normal business function. In that case, I think the social good that we're doing is just benefiting those people's lives. Coming into work every day and feeling like you're being just bogged down by the soul-sucking work about work and all of the logistics and coordination is just a much worse way to feel and to live. And so to free those individual people up, free those teams up to just get through their day-to-day work in a way that's more pleasant with less effort, that is some social good. But for me, the thing that makes me most excited is the idea that Asana could be this horizontal platform that could enable all the teams in the world that are working on exciting things, whether in a nonprofit context, a for-profit context, a governmental context, to accelerate their goals. That's what's exciting. When we left Facebook, we had this idea of, what if we could enable every organization in the world to move 5% faster? Like, could that be this 5% accelerant on all the things that we want to do as a civilization? We're definitely not at the every organization in the world part yet, though.
Right.
Happy to hear that you're Asana users. That's one more.
Yep.
Yes, Jeff?
But when we surveyed customers and asked them how much more efficient do they think they are, the average response was 45%. People feel like they're 45% faster with Asana. And so to the extent we can bring that to more and more teams, that's amazing.
That is objectively to your, but to your measure, that is a good thing, and the goodness is what you were striving for.
Exactly.
So Josh, I'll put that question to you. Social good, where does it fit in?
I mean, I think it's become clear over the past 10 years especially that doing something that is good for the world is good business. Whether it's, Tom's shoes, buy a pair, give a pair, Warby Parker. I think, so many people in e-commerce have, instituted that sort of philosophy. I don't know that it's always altruistic, but I think it is good and it is good for business. What we're doing, I wouldn't say is particularly altruistic either. I mean, we have a business that's making money, but we are also allowing for, tens of thousands of designers to make a living using our platform, which, that's why the business works. And, we think of our designers.
And just for anybody in the audience who doesn't know, you're speaking specifically of the business that you're running right now,
Sure.
and maybe you want to just explain what it
Correct.
does.
So the business is called TeePublic. It's a platform for artists and designers to upload their original artwork. They can sell those designs on T-shirts, art canvases, home goods, that sort of thing. So as a result, we have 3 billion active SKUs that are available for sale currently, which is just a function of having millions of designs and millions of different product combinations and that sort of thing. So as a result, we see people, especially like I mentioned earlier, from some of these lower income areas, such as like Southeast Asia, where they're uploading hundreds or thousands of designs and actually working hard at promoting them in whatever ways that they can, which is obviously good for us because we're making money every time that they produce a sale, but they're also supporting their families. So,
Right.
being able to build a marketplace and allow for people to become entrepreneurs on their own, I think is something I've always been really interested in.
So I'm curious, so both of you are in a position where at a very young age, you had a financial outcome, the sale of a company or a company that you worked at, that put you in a position where, to one degree or another, making money didn't have to be your primary immediate goal. How did that shift your business philosophy, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly made it so that I say no to a lot more things. I'm very hesitant to take a meeting I don't want to take or do things that, are not, what I want to be doing. So, I think it has shifted. I think it also, it means that I don't have to sell a company again. The first company that I sold, it was sort of like, if I want to live in New York City and raise a family here and do sort of these things, it sort of is a prerequisite to being able to afford to have that lifestyle. And then once you sort of are at that point, I think then it becomes more about, well, like, what do I want to spend my days doing? Like, what do I want to work on? What kind of projects are interesting? What kind of people do I want to work with? What kind of company culture do I want to be a part of? And you can be a little bit more specific with that because, like, you said, it's less important if it becomes less lucrative, it's not as much of a problem. But, as Justin said, I think, focusing on having profits, whether it's, to take your rocket into space or whatever, I think is still an important part of running any business, at least for me.
Yeah, Justin.
Yeah, I think as you move up the Maslow hierarchy of needs, it just becomes easier and easier to focus, to move your mindset from focusing on me to focusing on we, to moving to thinking about the bigger picture and how you can impact things at a higher level of abstraction. Though I often think that in tech, people reach that point in their careers much sooner than they realize they have, because if you're a software engineer, you can go choose where you want to work, and there's so many different companies, some of which are creating things that are that are focused entirely on shareholder value, and some of which are lucrative and at the same time can have positive social impact. And so I think there's an opportunity early on to make those decisions about where you want to work. But certainly the more that you're financially freed up, the more you can take bigger risks and think about it in a more top-down way.
And so this idea of taking risks leads me to a final question, and this question gets a one-word answer. Tomorrow, your current ventures wrap up with a bow, and you can direct your mind in pursuit of one next big opportunity. What is it?
Really, one word?
Just one. One word. You got one word.
I have no idea.
Plastics, man. Plastics. It's fair enough. Justin?
Peace.
Peace. Well, that's as good a place as any to leave it.
Yeah.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.